I would wish to discuss the complications of bariatric surgery procedure or a metabolic surgery procedure or a Roux-en-Y gastric bypass and a sleeve gastrectomy. So talking about complications, what are the major complications that one must understand? What are the major complications that a patient must understand before undertaking the surgery? Now, there can be close to 40-50 complications that one can expect. However, I will talk about what are the major complications and what are the steps taken to avoid these complications and what are the responsibilities of the patients to avoid such complications. Number one, one must understand if this surgery is done at a good institute by an expert, the risk of complications dramatically decreases, right? So when we talk about complication, we always take a rate of complication. So in a center who is doing bariatric surgery not very often, or the surgeon is not very well trained, or the staff or any other thing, or the instrumentations or the disposables that one uses, if they are not all in the same tune and are not the world-class standard, the risk of complications are much higher. Vis-a-vis a center which routinely does this bariatric surgery procedure, and not just the center, there are n number of things: the surgeon, the staff, the anesthetist, the intensivist, the OT technician, the nurse, the equipment that you use, the type of equipment that you use, the disposables that you use, and so forth. So largely talking about complications, there could be very short-term complications and there can be long-term complications. Now, short-term complications, there are three major complications that one must understand. Number one is the chance of bleeding. Now, bleeding, if you understand, can happen to anyone at any point of time, especially undergoing a surgery. So, starting from a small hole of a 3 mm can bleed, even if you have a thorn prick, or people who take blood sugar, they bleed every day, right? They take a small amount of blood. So, bleeding can be a problem if the staple line that we create starts to bleed. Now, I would say 90% of that is controllable because you can see that staple line bleed, right? And you can take a stitch or two and it stops. So, patients who are on blood thinners or patients who have had a stent in the heart or patients who have cardiac arrhythmias and or anticoagulants must be screened properly before we do any surgery, and we always do that. So bleeding is one risk which can happen either intraoperatively, that means we can see the bleeding and we can take a stitch, or we can put a clip, or we can use other mechanical or electromechanical ways to control the thing. The other one is bleeding inside the lumen. That means the bleeding happens inside the stomach pouch or inside the intestines. Now these bleeding are also usually self-limiting. That means majority of these bleedings will stop spontaneously. So we need to do a repeat hemogram check to see if you're not continuously bleeding, and some local hemostat, or the general hemostat that we give can control these bleeding. So largely bleeding is not a very big problem. If encounter, you can take a stitch or two. If it happens on the day 1, day 2, majority of them will stop. In very few chances we may have to give a blood transfusion, but those are real rare circumstances. In rare circumstances, an upper GI endoscopy can be done, and if you see a small spurter or you see a small bead, you can put a clip or you can do electrocautery. I have not really seen very many people undergoing a repeat surgery because of bleeding, and the literature also says that it's a very remote thing. The second important thing is the risk of leak. Now, what does this leak actually mean? You must have heard very many people talking about leaks and it's a dreaded complication. Yes, it is. So what is this leak? Now, leak is wherever we make any anastomosis or wherever we are joining two viscera together. When I say viscera, I mean the intestines or the stomach and the intestine, or the intestine between each other. We use stapling instruments and equipment, right? So there could be a technical fault in choosing the right stapling equipment, so that is a technical fault. Or you could have not mobilized and not moved the intestine and intestine, you not stapled them rightfully together. So those are two chances wherein leak can happen. Now leak can happen either intraoperatively, that means you see a leak while doing the surgery, you can take a stitch or two and you can stop the leak. Or a leak can happen immediately post-operatively, that means when you're in the ICU or in the stay of hospital or when you left home, right? So that is the time a leak can be dangerous, especially if not picked up at a very early part. If picked up at an early stage, leak can be very well managed by expert hands and it has almost a zero mortality. But if leak is missed, then even it can cause a big problem later. So leak is one. So to do leak, we can do intraoperative leak test. We can also do post-operative leak test to see that everything is okay. However, these leak tests can be fallacious at times, and even if all the leak tests are negative, you may still have a leak. So it is a very vigilant surgeon who can pick up an early leak and you can do something about the leak. Leaks in a sleeve are more problematic than leaks in a bypass. And bypass seldom leaks, but in the sleeve can have a leak, and it can even leak till about 5 years. It's something called a delayed leak because it's a very high pressure system. So leak in a sleeve is much more common than a leak in a bypass, number one. And the management also becomes more problematic because it's a very high pressure zone. Until you do something about it very vigorously, it's not going to close. So what are the options available to us when a patient does leak of a sleeve gastrectomy? Number one, do an upper GI endoscopy, put a sleeve, right? You can put a stent, or it's a long stent wherein we cover that leak and we remove that stent after 6 to 8 weeks so that the leak will automatically heal by itself. First. Second, if it's an acute leak and it's seen very early, we can even go inside, you can take 1 or 2 stitches. In a bypass, usually it doesn't leak, but if it does, it's easy because it's a low pressure system. You can go inside, take 1 or 2 stitches, and the leak usually stops by itself. So leak is the second thing. Third thing is something called a deep vein thrombosis and pulmonary embolism. Now this is one thing which we all dread about. Why? Because there is nothing that you can actively do surgically. You can only prevent a deep vein thrombosis and pulmonary embolism. In layman term, deep vein thrombosis basically means that the blood inside your deep veins or the veins in your calf area, in your thigh, they get clotted. The blood gets clotted and forms a clot. And this clot can actually break down and go to your lungs, into your heart, and cause problems there. So to prevent this, there are 3 basic things that you do. Number 1, keep walking. So you have to be mobile. Number 2, use a low molecular weight heparin. That means these are certain drugs and injections given to the patient so that the blood is slightly on the thinner side and it doesn't clot properly. And third is a compression device or compression stocking, wherein you always wear them, these stocking, so that there are some pressure given to you and you can avoid these deep vein thrombosis. So these are 3 main things, as I said. One is bleeding, which can be usually spontaneously stops. Number 2 is a leak, which can be checked intraoperatively and postoperatively, and third is a DVT with pulmonary embolism. Having said, there are another very small little thing like a delayed complication, like somebody says that you have to be on lifelong drugs, right? So lifelong drugs would mean that you would be popping one pill every day. That is not true. We need to check your vitamin levels, your protein levels 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, and if you are deficient, then you are given some vitamins probably every 3 months or 6 months for 3 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. You could be given some vitamin level. You could also be asked to supplement proteins, especially in the initial phase when when you're not taking adequate amount of diet, that you can have some amount of protein deficiency, and we may give you some protein powder. One more common thing that needs a mention here is the gallbladder stones and the gallbladder sludge. About 8 to 10% or 8 to 20%, I would say, patients with post-bariatric surgery come back with gallbladder stone and sludge. So in patients who actually form stones, a gallbladder surgery or a laparoscopic cholecystectomy becomes mandatory that time. And it is a very simple procedure. It's just a 5-7 minute procedure, 6 hours in the hospital, and then you can go back home. So that is worth mentioning, that you may make gallstones once you lose weight rapidly or once you lose weight, and at times that would need a surgical cure. And to complete the topic, so if in a patient undergoing bariatric surgery we do see some gallbladder sludge or we see some stones, so it is recommended that you could probably get your gallbladder out at the same time. Now, having touched that, it's also a mention here of the hernias, abdominal wall hernias that you see. So if a patient does have a hernia, and this is my personal choice, if it's a very small hernia of defect of less than 2 centimeters, which I can repair safely, I would do it. Otherwise, I would want to repair all hernias post weight reduction. So once the patient actually loses weight, that is the time hernia should be repaired, and that's the time hernia or hernioplasty becomes a very good and a successful option. Usually doing a hernia surgery or a mesh plasty in this obese patient is not very recommended, in the sense that we have a high failure chances. Earlier we've done a few, but I think today I am of an opinion that it could probably wait and we could do it later. So I think that completes a few of the complications, the earlier and the later ones, in patients who have undergone bariatric surgery. And I would again say the complication rate would largely depend on the institute and the surgeon that you choose. So all the best, good luck.